Hi, this is Matt from FlashQuery and Panorama. I wanted to show something that I put together that I thought you might find interesting. Just a quick intro, I'm the co-founder and probably the chief instigator behind FlashQuery, and I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. But anyway, I use Claude day to day, and I'm using it as I'm building FlashQuery, but I'm also using it as the product person, right, to capture information, to get it out of my head. And when I heard about live artifacts that came from Claude, I thought, well, this is an interesting idea, and let me see if I can give this a try. And I think more importantly, to show that I can use Claude not only to help with the build of this FlashQuery open source project, but also to help me manage how I work. And I've been an engineer and in tech for about 30 years. So I have ways that I like to work. And I thought, well, let me just give this a try. So here's what you're looking at right now is what I call the work center. And it's work center for FlashQuery because it's the product I'm working on. But you could tailor this to be whatever you want it to be. Um, and so this is running inside of Claude as an artifact. And it'll update automatically. And one of the interesting things about this is that this is synced not to connectors necessarily, but using MCP to FlashQuery itself to connect to my file system to connect the documents. So what you're looking at here is actually a listing of all the documents I have. They're all markdown documents. And in fact, if I come over here, you'll see probably a little hard to read, but I have all my folders here that I keep things for research and roadmap bugs and features I'm working on that I'm specking out. And this here is actually mapping over all of my documents in here. And every one of my documents even has front matter that designates what section it's residing in, or basically what stage of the flow it is in. So you can see here, I can go and click on any one of these and go look at the description of it, what it's about, what it enables, and things like that in terms of other features. But this has worked out really well for me. And so I have a way to go and just look at, what needs my attention. And, all these things are getting my attention at some point. Um, and even groups of things. So this group here is actually a subdirectory. So it grouped them together by subdirectory because that's how I organize things. And probably you all do too, in terms of folders and things like that. So, and then I have a couple other ways of viewing it. So again, I said every file has a front matter associated with it, and that front matter is used by FlashQuery and tracked, and it also helps to inform the live artifact here in Claude to tell me where anything is in the process. So here I've kind of built I don't know if you want to call it a Kanban board or something like a Jira board, but it's a way for me to keep track of anything I'm working on and see what stage it's in. And I could look at it by whether it's a bug or it's feature or research or where it's at. But the most useful thing, and I thought you would probably enjoy seeing this, is the graph. And so this graph here is a way for me to look at any feature I'm working on and to see what it enables. So I could go and say, I'm going to click on this feature and it's going to tell me all the different things that this feature enables ahead of it. Or another way of saying it is the dependencies going back. But this is really interesting, and it's probably the most useful part of this because I can always go back and refer and say, okay, if I'm doing this, what does this depend on, right? And what is this enabling when I get this done? And it just turns out this has been really, really helpful for me. And so what I end up doing is I end up working from here, and I use different skills, and I'll talk about that in a moment, but I use different skills to basically capture ideas or capture bugs or quickly get things out of my head and get it into the process, right? And the nice thing is that as I add documents to either I can capture them here and it turns into a markdown document in my area that I just showed in my file system, which FlashQuery manages. Or if I just go create a file over there, it will show up here. And as long as I have the front matter that says, well, this is enabling something or it's depending on something else, it'll resolve here automatically. So this live artifact really does become a live artifact. And this has become my little work center for how I manage the product features and bugs and everything day to day. I'll show you really quick. Let me go over, I don't want to make this a super long video, but I'll show you how I'm doing this and what this kind of looks like. So the way that I tend to work is I need to get things out of my head, and my brain seems to move pretty fast. Um, and I can be forgetful sometimes too. So I've got to get out of my head. So I actually have a skill that will just capture something that I need to get out, and then it will turn into a triage. And I have to figure out where is it going to go. And the where is it going to go, again, is a folder where I can keep both bugs or what I'll call ideas or things I need to go research. And bugs need to be investigated, and that skill will go back, look at the code base, and start figuring out where the root cause might be in the code. And then that becomes something that is a document that I can go and have an AI development agent go and triage and implement the fix in a in one of my checkouts in one of my branches. Or I can go and say, this is an idea, and that idea, it may be nothing, right? So it may end up being something I thought of at 1 a.m. and it sounded good at the time, but then it turned out to be something that it was not a smart idea. Other times I get realizations and I say, you know what? I need to go research this a bit more, and I have skills that let me do that. Either way, it'll fall out from here or it becomes something that goes onto the roadmap. And so if you haven't heard of live artifacts, I'll just mention really quick. I'm kind of going a little out of order, but they're persistent in Claude Desktop and they're web apps. They actually are HTML running in a sandbox environment. The problem I found early on was that it had a lot of connectors to many different other tools. What it didn't have was the ability to go and talk to your own file system. Not that I could find, and maybe it does now, or maybe it will, but at least at this point in May 1st of 2026, it didn't. So that was a challenge. And I thought, well, this is a perfect time to use FlashQuery because FlashQuery is meant to do exactly that. So I'll kind of show you how this works. Claude Live Artifacts right now, they have connectors. And you've probably seen videos, if you go on YouTube, you'll find probably more than you can shake a stick at, of people showing how they built live artifacts. And they connect to whatever you want to connect to. The problem is, again, it doesn't connect to your file system. So you need some way to do that. It does support MCP, which is great. So I can connect to MCP server, and that server could conceivably connect to my file system, which, as it turns out, is what FlashQuery, our open project, is doing. So just so you know, FlashQuery, the open source project, this is essentially what it is. It's an MCP server that allows you to connect to Claude, to Cursor, to anything. If you're using OpenRouter, if you're using Zed on your Mac, it can connect to MCP tools. It allows any language model to get to effectively a localized environment where you can have, and this is what it runs on. It runs on Supabase, which could be locally stored or locally hosted or cloud hosted. You can point to a folder hierarchy that you care about. I call it the vault, kind of like Obsidian does, but it's just a set of folders. And if you happen to have that vault as a Git repo, it will, when it makes modifications, it will also commit those, and you'll have a record of everything that you've done in that repository. So it's really giving you access to have any language model talk to your files, and also it maintains state and other information in Supabase. It also uses pgvector for doing embeddings. I'm not doing justice about all the things that this does, but it's actually really quite useful. So this live artifact that I just showed you is running on top of FlashQuery as I'm laying out features to be built in FlashQuery. So this whole thing is kind of cyclic or meta or recursive or whatever you want to call it. And this is, again, just what it looks like, right? So I have the tool here. I use it day to day. And it's FlashQuery is managing a two-way sync to my files here, and that way I can work from here, I can have it do things. I can read the state of everything. The nice thing is that you get the benefit of what AI can do in general, right? So you could go back and say, hey, review all of my files and tell me if all the dependencies are up to date, right? And it'll go through and look at the front matter and say, ah, this actually is relevant to this or it relates to this. So when I go back to my live artifact, it really does. It has references. So let me go back and reset this. The dotted lines here are basically related to links. So, this thing here is related to this over here and related to that over here, but it also has dependencies flowing as well. So it really is quite extensible. And the fact that I can work in this interface or just jump over to the file system is really helpful. And it's just made my day-to-day so much easier. And then, of course, I can come back here and I'll just kind of wrap up and say I have custom skills that I put together that really just back into my workflow, right? Like when I mentioned before about how I just kind of capture and triage and I got to get things out of my head. I built these skills around that. So I can build the skills to say, I'm going to capture an idea, I got to get it out. I can kick off research on a document, right? And the thing is that the documents become the record. They become the place where I am doing the work. And I say that because the context window too, over here in Claude, is the other place that I do work. But what I try to do is get everything out of the context window as much as I can. I don't want it to sit there because then I have to go remember where the conversation was that happened. So the more I can get information out of perhaps a discussion here and get it into a document is a much better way for me to work. And then I can go into the documents, which are all in Markdown in my file system, update those, even leave questions. Sometimes I'll go and I'll leave some notes and I'll say, Matt's note, and I'll type in, something that I think we need to think about or an idea I had. Then I just go back over to the skill here and I say research and research that document, and it will go through, review my notes. And then sometimes it'll kick off web research or other types of activities, come back with sources and tell me where what it found, summarize it, and it keeps it all in that document. And that document is an artifact itself, not a Claude artifact, but an actual Markdown document artifact that I can take with me as I progress through the process of figuring out what I'm going to do with that research, whether it turns into a feature or turns into something else, or who knows, right? And then of course, I have a chat skill here that will allow me to talk about a particular document, and I give it behaviors, like don't always agree with me, push back, help me think this through, relate it back to the existing code base about the features that we have, make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Processing will move things along the board, and a dev plan is the most recent one I put together where it takes any feature and kind of specs it out into a phased development plan so that I can go and then work with agents to go and build it. But by that point, you have a really solid set of documentation about what features, what skills you want to, what features and what tests you want to run. The dev plan actually will also build a whole test plan for it and make sure that's involved in every phase of the work. And it's worked really well. Like I'll just kind of wrap this up and say that I've been really happy with using this work here on the work center, as I've called it. It took, I would say, it took over a weekend of on and off doing it, plus maybe a few days. And then there's always tweaks, right? There's always something that comes up where I just want to have it, you know, show things a little bit differently or do that. And you do that through the window here. So I can go here and, basically use Claude to go make updates to it. Sometimes it'll look a little wonky or it won't, work, the way I want it. So I'll take a screenshot and drop it in here and give it some feedback, and then it regenerates for me. But, in the end, from a product management standpoint, and that's where I'm coming from, this has been working out really well for me. And I don't have to go and buy a SaaS subscription to anything. And I've molded it to how I think and work. And it didn't take a lot of time to go and build it in the end. So, well, that was it. Thanks a lot for for watching, for listening. And I did this all in one take. How about that? All right. You all have a good day. Take care. Bye.